Hey guys, it's Sebastian back with another video. And today we're here on episode 15 of Lost Hombres. And I'm here to talk to you guys just a little bit about mind, body, spirit stuff. I really want to address my view on masculinity, on being a man, especially in today's society, and just kind of taking some time to reflect on things throughout history, ancestors, kind of stuff, like what we can learn from the world that we live in, especially when we stop allowing the system to control the way we view our abilities, what we can offer to the world, how we can operate in this world. There is such a push from the elite, the people above, to create a false narrative that we are not capable of more than we are, that this idea that magic, energy, all this stuff doesn't exist, that it's all a fantasy fairy tale. Like, they don't want us to actively achieve any kind of homeostasis, because the more grounded that we are, the less we're vulnerable to them creating systems that will negatively impact us, whether it has to do with the way we consume things, whether it has to do with the way we operate and live. And a lot of the problems that we're dealing with today, especially in today's world, are not issues that I would say are normal issues, because the way that we can connect with the world, the way propaganda can be expedited, like severely expedited, the way information can be manipulated, it's really evident. I mean, this idea that history repeats itself really comes down to the fact that there is this ongoing cycle within humanity where they'll get to these peaks in creativity, in science and ideas and concepts, whatever, right? Understanding. But the more that we reach the enlightenment, the more that we can fall from those high areas, right? So it's like, as much as we're innovating on one hand, we're also destroying on another. The idea of, for example, like when we understood nuclear power, right? It's like, this is a phenomenon. Wow, we're really starting to understand how this universe operates, right? I like to think of like a nuclear bomb almost like a glitch in the computer, right? So if you move the wrong systems, or corrupt the wrong files, essentially, it can make the whole screen, go blue, right? It can make the whole system shut down. And so essentially you're disrupting the universe's flow when you create these bombs. But anyway, so this is an idea of like how there's this really powerful thing in the world, this concept, and it also leads to a bunch of destruction. So we are in a state of existence where anytime we try to advance humanity, the worst of humanity starts to show itself, right? So when we have these large institutions, for example, these big banking industries, they are able to take this money that they get, this a huge amount of money that wasn't the same in the past, right? When you couldn't do things over the internet, you didn't have a way to connect to a conscious, a conscious state, essentially, cross, city, state lines, country lines. So, for example, let's say you're in one of the big banks, right? And so everyone's putting their money across the world, state, whatever, right? That we're across the country into these big banks, and it gives them a lot of leverage and power, essentially, because you're seeing an entire ecosystem of money be filtered into them, even though they're not really caring for the little person. So when you used to have a localized bank, for example, at least that was a community bank, so it really only could have the leverage power of the community around it. Nowadays, because you have these corporatized banks, they could just come to a city and invest millions of dollars in projects and then abandon it, right, if they want to, because they're so globalized that they stop caring about the individuals. And once we stop caring about humans and stop valuing different humans, this is when you start getting corrupt systems. So That's another thing that you can say too, is that we have a society right now where the value of people is being diminished. We always are setting values to what people can do or what people are. And when you set values on people, you start to take away from the idea that you can't put value on time, energy, and attention on spirit, right? Like theoretically, you are making up values that didn't exist within a system. Like there was no price of an apple until we set a price of an apple. There was no price. There is no cost. Like there's nothing there. That apple would have grown regardless of what our intervention would have been, right? So there are certain things in this world that we start to put value on. And when we put value on these things, it starts to cause, problems within the system, because then we start to, everything has to have a value now. And when everything has to have a value, then things can be worse than others. Some things can be better than others. So once you create a value system, at what point does that end? Right. So, I mean, we're even valuing people's organs, as an example, right? So this idea that some things can cost more or be more valuable than others starts to create a paradigm where now everything has value, but also it's to what value, right? So obviously, corporations, people in power are going to push these ideas because, again, they can manipulate the propaganda to tell you what is value and what doesn't, right? I mean, they can make us believe that golden rocks have value now. Like this rock that's golden has value because, we're going to tell you it has value and you got to believe in the system. And so they want you to have a faith in the system that they created. I mean, even like the centralized banking system, right? If you look at the way it operates, it's doing it, like, even though it's called the federal system, it's not run by the government. And so we're indefinitely in debt to these corporations, and they're going to set the precedent of what kind of propaganda they want to put, and that propaganda is going to impact the way the culture, the everything plays out. And so when you have these high level elites that are able to run the show with their propaganda, and they're able to kind of influence the way that people operate, well, then you put yourself in a situation where instead of looking at each other as humans, we look at each other as values, like as a system. Even when you look at things like slavery or things like that, or indentured servitude, or even like the prison system, the prison industrial system, or even soldiers, citizens, like a government, right, should help its citizens because the only reason it's there is to help its citizens. But the governments now are seeing their citizens as some kind of like property, or they're seeing like even the idea of citizenship, right? To some extent is like a complex version of, like indentured servitude. Like you're a citizen of here. So if you go anywhere in the world where humans are from, we are from Earth. If you're in Earth, right, you are from here. So when you have a system where you pretty much cap people to where they're born, right? Because you're a citizen of this place, then we remember that, or we forget that we're all humans. Like we're all from the same planet. Like we're all from here. Like it's not that, oh, I'm from this region, so that makes me different. No, we are literally human. The only reason you're from that region is because your lineage at some point went exploring and had like, intelligent design happen, which again is a form of evolution and change because you adapted to the environment over time, especially as you slowly migrate somewhere. And yeah, that's why you have certain traits because you were adapted to be in that environment. But that doesn't necessarily mean, especially as a human being who are greatly adaptable, even beyond just the genetic thing, right? We can change our environment to help us fit within that system. That we're all from the same damn planet. We're all human beings. I like to say this too, like, what the fuck does a spirit look like? Like it's like almost like the idea that we all have bones and we all have skeletons, so all of our skeletons are going to be the same. It's the same concept, but when you look at it from the spiritual realm, how do you know what a spirit, what race it is, what gender it is? Like it's a spirit. Like there's no, like the soul doesn't have a gender, right? It just is. Like it's a personality. It's a spirit. When you're being haunted, you're not like, is it a man or woman? I mean, I'm sure there's certain traits that you can probably figure out or do some inferring. But again, a soul is genderless. There's no gender there. So just some things to think about, that when we start adding value to everything, there comes a point that we realize that we are taking away the power of a person. We're removing like the fact that their spiritual energy, their conscious state, is what makes us human. There's no price in heaven. There's no, that a computer doesn't think about the worth outside of the computer network, right? It's just doesn't it doesn't matter. It's a different realm of existence. So this is just some stuff I've been thinking about lately, that we live in a system that has a lot of propaganda, a lot of value systems to it. And again, it's easy to break things down, right? To like good, bad, more or less, right? So when you have people that have been systematically uneducated, when you have people that have been systematically brainwashed, right? Through, again, propaganda, comfort, whatever you want to call it, right? When you don't have enlightened people, when you take away opportunities for enlightenment to happen, then you start to create a system where people disconnect from reality, right? Disconnect from the present. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, if you look at the way, even like most ads work, right? It's this, you need this to be more, or you're less if you don't have this, right? So they're automatically casting spells on people, whether it's images, whether it's words, whatever the phrase, whatever it may be, because words are what is magical in this world, right? Words can impact the spirit. That's why you can curse or bless somebody. When you curse somebody, you're putting negative energy into them with your words, and you're hurting their soul. If you're blessing somebody, you're putting positive energy into them, and you're lifting them up. So when you hit them with the negative, right, you're hurting the soul. And when you hit it with the positive, you're healing the soul, right? So those words are very impactful. Music's also very impactful as well. So depending on what words you're hearing that are being thrown at you are going to affect the spiritual realm. And that's why they are using these words as codes, right, to affect the system, the psyche, the spirit. And that's what people take on, that negative energy, which then disrupts their homeostasis, right? Because they're feeding into that voice in the back of your head, or they're feeding into your cravings, okay? And so when you feed into cravings, also when you destabilize people at a young age, especially in childhood, you create safe and unhealthy environments for them, like situations where they're not being emotionally supported, or supported as an individual, or supported in their stress mechanism. When you put them in positions where they're destined to fail, you're just going to keep creating cycles of people that are easy to manipulate and also easy to take advantage of, because they lack that sense of intuition. So they don't trust their feelings. So they can't scan the room that well, and they don't trust their thoughts. So they're always in their head, repeating. And so this causes them not to be able to access their power, right? Especially like, how many people do you know in the world that say, yeah, I didn't want to be a problem, or I didn't want to bother them, or oh, I'm just a problem for everybody. I'm, like that victim mentality or that avoidant mentality. And those things are reflections that you have lost your power, right? So the more that we can stress parents out, the more we can create misinformation, the more we can teach them that we need to rule with an iron fist instead of love and compassion, the more we can make fun of things like emotions, the more we make fun of the most naturalistic things, the easier it is to program us, right? Like, why do you think it's so hard to program things like plants and stuff? Because they're so natural that they already have been programmed. We're trying to reprogram them. They've already been programmed, right? The universe already programmed these things. That's why they work the way they do. They have an operating system already. What humans are trying to do is take this operating system, hijack it, and take away its spirit and soul, and just make it like, imagine paintings, but without it. Okay, it's like AI, right? Like, when you see an AI painting or an AI drawing, it's AI. It's like missing something. It's almost like there's something there that you can tell that it was done by a computer, not a person. Like there's something about the way it's created that it's like lost some of its soul. And so this same concept is what's happening right now with our society. When you remove feelings from kids, right, you're taking away their ability to pick up on the frequencies around them. So then they're not recognizing what the fuck is going on, right? So they start to struggle with boundaries. And then if you don't help them work on their stress, they're overly conscious all the time. So they're more like, I'm going to cause problems, right? And again, it's easier to keep somebody low. And like, imagine if you're at work, right? And you're always stressed out and you're always thinking you're doing something wrong. Well, what are they going to assume about you at some point? That you don't know what you're doing because you're always stressed out thinking you're doing something wrong. So how confident do you sound? So right there, you're already at a deficit, right? If you don't know how to feel or you're overly emotional, you're already at a deficit. Why? Because you're more reactive to things, right? You're more likely to defend yourself. You're more likely to lash out. And so when we destabilize children, when we indoctrinate them, put them in factory environments like school systems and stuff, when we put them in these situations where they lack freedom and they would prefer to be indoctrinated, well, then you create a system where they become unstable, and as they get older, they continue with that instability, and they continue struggling throughout their life with feeling like, hey, I'm grounded, I know what I'm doing, I know what's going on in my life. And so that imbalance is what allows these entities to then take control of their deficits and use them to their strengths, but actually at the deficit of this person, almost like gaslighting, right? So it's like the politicians where they're like, we made it so that housing is impossible to achieve because corporations can buy it at ridiculous amounts. And then when there's a housing crisis, they say, oh, these people are just lazy. So again, the system that they created where they're having problems, right, is the same system that then they blame you for. If they start taking away healthcare, right, they take away people's opportunities, right, and people start getting sick, then they're like, oh, it's because they don't take care of themselves. They don't have an option. You're not letting them go get the services that they need. So it's like, it's not a surprise. This situation is being created, right? So again, when we live in a society where they can manufacture problems, right, and convince us from early childhood that we are the issue, look at the recycling problem. They say, oh, we're the reason why there's a recycling problem. But Coca-Cola never had to make plastic bottles. It never had to do that. It could have just been like, yeah, we're not going to do that. That's not conducive to the environment. But instead, they've blamed everybody for not recycling their products. Again, blaming the people for the problem they created, which never had to be a problem in the first place. But because money runs the show, propaganda runs the show, what ends up happening? Well, you get in a situation where they can destroy half the fucking planet and then blame the people even though they're causing the problem. And this is really the problem that we're dealing with now, is that there's this disillusion of what we are and what we can do and what we can achieve. And again, they paint this little picture up here, right? It's like putting a window in a prison and saying, look, one day you'll be free, right? But then when you get out there, you realize that was a facade, right? You're never going to leave here. That was the reality. But again, they give you this idea, this illusion that you're going to be able to get out of the situation someday. You're going to be able to achieve and become greater. But that's not really what's happening, right? That's all it is. It's almost like what they do with religion, the way kind of Jesus talked about it when it comes to churches and things like that, or like places of worship, where they place the God outside of the person so that you have to keep praying for this thing. Now, I make a comment or a joke or commentary about how there's a lot of churches that will, look at God up there while they're just down here taking all your money, stealing all your things, like, literally family jewels, if you want to say too, right? So they put this entity outside of you, and then they punish you for not living within a orderly system because you need to achieve that. I mean, the American dream is the same thing. What is heaven? A dream state? Right? The nirvana. Well, what are they saying the American dream is? It's the same thing, right? that if you follow these tenets, if you follow these rules, if you follow these things, you will achieve that dream, right? What is God teaching, right? Do these things and you will achieve this, right? So they're doing the same thing. They're putting this idea that this existence is outside of yourself and you have to work to somehow get to the gates of heaven, literally like it, like you have to get to this gate, you have to get to this thing, and then you're going to be let in. Even though the reality is that we are the temple, we are the gate, we are the problem, we are the one that's keeping ourselves from opening up and really fulfilling ourselves. We're the gate. It's like the gates, the different gates of your chakras, the different doors, each gate, right? It's like you're transcending. So people see this gate outside. It's like you did all this, and it's like almost like they set up the lottery system, except you can work towards getting to the lottery, right? One day you'll have it all. You just got, it's going to come to you. No, that's not how you build heaven, right? You build heaven in your life. You make your dreams come true by living a more authentic life, not by following somebody else's steps to get to this imaginary like fulfillment zone where it's bliss here. Okay. Even the American dream isn't bliss. It's not bliss. Why? Because the American dream can become a nightmare in a second. If you know anything about this fucking economy, all of a sudden you got your things paid off, you got retirement, all this, and then boom, your company closes before you even get your pension, right? Your 401k gets completely destroyed because it's not their money, it's your money. So they can just do whatever the fuck they want with it. What's stopping them from talking to their buddies, investing in their company, and then losing all your money? Like, you gave them your money and then they lose it. And then they're like, oh, that's how it works sometimes, you know? Even though you've seen this system play out over and over again where they run the whole show. And then when the big ones, the big corporations that lose, get saved while we get fucked over. Oh, you lost your house. Oh, man, that sucks. You should have saved better. You're like, I literally did this my entire life. I've been saving my whole life. You told me this was a fail-safe. You told me, and this is the other thing too. They will come at you so hard from these like 401ks and stuff like that. They will sit there and hound you. No, you got to invest. You got to invest. Anytime I got someone trying to convince me to invest and like trying to really convince me, that says a lot about where we're at. Because I shouldn't need to be convinced if it's a good idea. If I can get explained it pretty easy and I can understand it, because again, I'm an educated man. So show me something, give me some insight. But when I can come up with a better idea that has less problems, less loopholes, I'd rather stick to that. I don't want to invest my money in somebody else and hope that they make me money. What kind of world? Like we are not millionaires. These people don't care about us. This isn't some spending money. This is our life savings. Okay. Like people that are millionaires, billionaires, they buy property. They buy things that they know isn't going to go anywhere. When you're putting shit in a stock, you're putting it in a fucking imaginary bank, an imaginary system that's not real. Okay, when you're buying land is real, okay? That's an actual thing. When you're buying things like property and you can like all of a sudden add, rent cost and you can like sell it by piece or whatever the fuck you want to do with it. That's when you have real investment. That's when you need somebody to invest your money, okay? You put some money in stock, it's only when you really like know the people or own the people or you know all about the backdoor deals and all that. When you have a system that we actively know is colluding within that system, right? There's active collusion and we know this. How could you invest in them? It's like going to a casino and knowing the casino is rigged against you actively, and you're still like, well, I still have a chance I could win. I mean, that's literally the stock market in a nutshell. It's a rigged casino, right? With the illusion that there's law and order, right? Just as much as a casino has law. A casino has certain fail safes, right? But they're still profitable. How's that? Why is the stock system the same way? Why are there so many convoluted things that you need to know and phrases and sayings? And because again, the more they can keep it confusing, the more they can keep up the illusion. I mean, look at MLMs, right? There's all these like detox teas and stuff and all these things. And what do? They give you the oh, look, this and that and that, and they give you this illusion, right? Even though the product doesn't do any of that shit, right? But you don't have that kind of information, so they put this illusion in front of you to keep you what? In that fucking little game of theirs, right? So they have to convince you to keep giving up your time, energy, and attention by creating an illusion that's confusing for you to understand, right? It's complicating things so that we can keep you under our spell. So that's really what's happening right now. We live in a society where, again, we've removed the emotional state for people. We removed the comfort. We've removed certain things. And you're seeing the outcome of what these effects can have on people in the long run, right? When you grow up without feelings, you have a hard time with empathy because you don't know how to feel for others. You only feel for yourself, and you don't think about others, right? Because you're too much in your feelings to think about things. Now, if you're a kid that grew up and you didn't get to express your feelings, right? And so you're all calculation, you're all logic. You have a hard time feeling for other people because you're super calculated in the world. So everything's calculation. So this is why it's important to find that balance in life. Why? Because again, in order for you to have power, in order for you to be able to set limits, in order for you to feel that you have a say in this world, you need to work on that balance overall, because that's what the system wants to remove from you. Why do you think they don't want us to feel in school anymore? What do they remove? Music, art. They've removed a lot of programs because feeling invokes emotion, right? And they see emotion as a bad thing, even though emotion is what keeps all of us human. It's the one universal thing, right? Without feeling, if they're emotionless, that's almost like being dead, literally. Why are robots like dead things that are alive? It's essentially because they don't feel. So even though they can operate like they're alive and think, they don't feel. So that's what's never going to, AI can't feel. It doesn't have the organic state that we do, where we can connect with the world. And I mean, it's a very complex system. Feelings are between the, touch, taste, smell, sound. So we literally can absorb the universe around us, right? In ways that we're still trying to program robots to understand, right? We're still trying to program AI or different androids to be able to do a fraction of what we're able to do right now. We're the most organic type of machinery ever, right? And we have so many sensors and sensory inputs. Where do you think they got a lot of the information of how to program stuff? The human experience. We are the initial android, right? We have an operating system, literally. Like we have our own machine. We have our own software. We have all that stuff. We already have. When you click the install button, it starts doing this. It knows the code. We have the code. It knows when to do it. We have the code. We're just coded. DNA is just coding, right? At the end of the day. So when you take away feelings, you're taking away part of their humanity, right? When you take away their thoughts, you're taking away that conscious state, which is what God gave us to be conscious, right? So God gave us feelings to connect, and God gave us mind to understand. So when we connect and understand, we have empathy, right? They don't want us to have empathy in this world. You have to remember, right now we're like in a dog fighting cage, and we're like the dogs, and the handlers are the politicians, and the people that run the arena are like the bankers or like the people, the oligarchs, right? They're running the show from the top. And so we're just dogs to them. That's why they need to keep convincing people to fight each other. They got to make the resources limited. They have to. Why do you think we could probably fix most of the world's problems, right? But then if we solve all the problems, then nobody's going to need a solution. That's the problem. Is that what solution can I sell you if I fix all your problems? So how can I keep investing you for your energy, your time, your attention, right? How can I keep harvesting everything out of you without killing you? I still need you alive. I still need you to be around. I don't want to kill you, but I don't want to also, give you enough life where I'm not able to benefit off of you. So that's the system that we live under, that they need us to be slightly unstable enough to be able to benefit from using us, but not unstable enough where we die. That's it. Just keep them right there. Get them. Because like, think about it, right? Like, how did they do slavery? Think about it, right? They had to keep people alive enough to get the work out of them, but not enough to feel fulfillment and, feel like they don't need to go do those things. So we need to create a scarce sense of discomfort, right? To get them to push. And that's really what you're seeing happen. Like, let's destroy feelings, right? Let's make them bad, right? Let's make them weak. Let's destroy thought, right? Because that's stupid. Being smart, stupid. So we got to do that, right? So we got to destroy the intelligent mind, which is the conscious state, and we have to destroy the emotional mind, right? Which is the craving state. And so if I can destroy your cravings or make you overcrave, and I can destroy your conscious state by either making you not think or overthink, then I've created an imbalance that now I can profit off of. Because when people are balanced, they're less likely to consume. Literally, right? Like food, stuff, because you're satisfied. If I can imbalance you, I can make you overconsume and create a cycle now where you're an overconsumer now, right? You're an overconsumer, whatever that consumption may be, right? Whether you're worried because you're in your thoughts, or you're overly consuming because of the worry, or you're overly emotional, so you're overly consuming because of your emotions, right? So one, you're over consuming things that are making you stress out, and one, you're over consuming things that are depressing you, right? So you're trying to compensate for these energies. And that's really what you're seeing, that we live in a society that wants us to be unstable. They want us to lose our soul, essentially. They want to create the demon state, right? Literally a demonic state where people struggle with empathy. They struggle with having a soul. And remember what I'll teach you guys this one too. Heaven on earth, hell on earth, pretty simple stuff. Hell on earth, obviously, is going to feel like a place where people want to consume your soul. So they're going to try to eat your soul, right? So in hell, what do they want? The devil, demons, they all want your soul, right? So you give them a soul to consume. In heaven, they don't need your soul because you have a soul and they want you to appreciate the soul that you have. Like, they want you to appreciate who God made you to be, right? So you're here, you have a personality, you have your own traits, you have your own existence. And really what heaven wants everybody to appreciate that essence that they have so that it's heaven on earth, right? Everyone's enlightened. It's a light. That's why it feels light. It feels like we're on cloud 9 because we're all elevated. We're all lifting each other up. So when we're looking at the world, the more that I can make people, lack empathy, be destabilize them, put their problems outside of themselves so they never fix themselves. They never actually do the inward looking. They always do the outward looking. Well, then I can keep them in a state of constant confusion, constant frustration, constant anger, constant despair, like this ongoing lack of heart, right? And then I can cause them to infight. I can cause them to go start sucking everybody else's energy out. It's like almost like a vampire, right? Once someone sucks all your life out, you start sucking the life out of everybody else. Once the demon wins, you become a demon too, right? All these concepts, the living dead, right? If I eat your brain, right? Like, we're just going to be, mindless creatures. And so what are they doing? They're out there. I like to say there's two types of demons. There's two types of entities, people you'll see, parasites and predators. So parasites are people that are going to feed off your energy because they need a host. And predators are waiting for the weak so they can eat them, right? So you have two types of people that you're going to notice in the world that are looking to take your energy. And again, it's not necessarily their fault. They are a victim of circumstances, right? And the problem is there's not enough people with enlightenment to lift people up. There's so much people with darkness, hate, all that negativity, the chaotic energy, right? It's like there's a lot of Sith Lords right now. And all this negative, chaotic energy is causing them to, again, misery loves company, right? It's going to cause other people to destabilize. And so that's really what they want right now, is to create a state of destabilization and not enlightenment, because people that are enlightened, again, stop being consumers, start having power, literally willpower, like the power, the desire to put limits, the desire to break chains, right? And they want to break your will, literally in times of slavery, in times of war, in times where they want to break will. Because will is that enlightenment to say, fuck this. My soul is worth more than whatever the hell you're offering me. but they don't want they want you again to be convinced, and even better, willingly. So when you're a willing person to submit, that's even better for them, right? Because then they have no worry that you're ever going to what? Find your light and fight back. Fight back with the chaos. Fight back with the disruption. I mean, look at right now with Israel and some of the things that are happening over there. Like how many politicians will sit there and just keep spewing the same BS. And it's like, dude, none of you actually think for yourselves. Like that's how you know it's a problem. When they all say the same exact line, they don't speak for themselves, right? Like me as a spiritual person, I'm not spitting off everything I hear from everybody else. I'm giving you my interpretation of the situation as a human being, right? They don't. They say the same pieces. They say the same things. Like once it's in the sphere, they all just start parroting. And again, that's like that zombie brains, brains, brains. Anybody who has a brain, everybody wants to eat you until you become brain rotted. I mean, that's like literally like a zombie. Like we have a bunch of that. Like anybody who's an intellectual, they want to eat up all your intellectualism until you're just a zombie, just like everybody else. That's the real programming that you're seeing, the zombie state, right? So you have like the people again that are predators that are sitting there calculating how do we convince more people to give us their energy willingly. And then you have like the grunts that are like the zombies that are just sitting there waiting to eat anybody who has a thought, to make them just like them. Because remember, all zombies think the same, right? And when you think the same, you'll act the same, right? Because there's no like change in personality. They're very predictable because they don't think. They lack a soul. And both demons and zombies lack souls. I mean, you could say zombies like a demon, right? They lack soul, right? They lack that personality. They're dry. They're very consistent. So, especially growing up in America, where again propaganda is normalized. I mean, we it's crazy. You'll see campaigns of propaganda, and it'll be like proof it's propaganda, and you don't hear anybody say nothing. But again, it's because who's in charge? The media, right? What did I say about people that repeat themselves? If you look at the news, a lot of time news segments, you'll see those videos where they say the same exact thing, the same exact way. It's like somebody that none of these anchors have individualism when it comes to that. None of them are actually telling a story from their perspective, where you have 50 different humanistic perspectives about a situation so you can come up with a more rational idea. No, they're all the same. And this idea has been sold to us. Like it needs to be the same. It needs to be equal. I think when we were, as humans, like when we were in nature and there was two things that were similar, it was really cool. It's like, wow, these are exactly the same. But now we've, that same phenomenon, like, well, that's so cool. We've now made that like, that's how it is. It's like sugar, right? Sugar used to be like, oh, this is rare. And now it's a commodity. Like it's everywhere, right? So they take what's special and rare and they plaster it everywhere because that's, again, taking advantage of the human psyche and understanding how we operate. So that's a lot of like what I see right now. I feel like we're in a place in time where they want to confuse people. They want to keep us grounded instead of elevated and heightened. Because again, when you start to elevate, you start to see everything. So they want to keep us in a low energy state. They want to manipulate kids from a young age, make them believe things like, you got to do good for somebody else. It's always for somebody else. They say it's for you because it's your performance, but it's not for you. You're not writing for you. You're not drawing for you. You're not learning for you. You're learning for somebody else. And so from the very beginning, they are teaching us to give away our time, energy, and attention, that's normal. It's normal to go give all your energy to somebody. It's normal for someone to be in charge of you. It's normal to feel disconnected from the people around you. It's normal to be in an environment where you are with a bunch of people you don't know and don't care about, and they have to call this normal. This is what's happening. Society never worked like this. We never had this type of disengagement from culture. I mean, that's why Americans have such a hard time identifying culture, because our culture is a system, right? It's a systematic thing. It's all the same. It's all the same. That's what makes it boring. It's all the same. It's all the same colors, all the same outfits, all the same. There's no variety. There's no your family crest. There's no, this is your industry, this is your, they want to homogenize everything. And that's the real issue, is that we've taken away the human spirit. We've taken away individualism, right? I like that they say that Eastern cultures are more more like family based and stuff, and then the U.S. is more individual based. But at the same time, I also believe that they're in a lot of ways individual based too, because they find themselves. They find who they are. They find their connection with their past. They find their connection with their spirit, right? They, even like people doing like kung fu and stuff, like like people that are older in China and stuff, that sit there and like they get in tune with their spirit. They understand that their ancestors were teaching them something, doing something. We have a problem in America because we don't have ancestors here. We don't have that connection. We're not connected to the land. We're not connected to the environment that we're from, that we always have to consume because it's not real. It's not ours. We're not even native to these lands. We're not native to this place. And you can feel that we're the foreigner. And so this creates that duality where we are separating ourselves from the past because we don't have a true past. And then that creates a problem too, because then how do you connect with the human experience if we're just living for right now, right? We're doing the disservice to all of our ancestors who tried to teach us something about the universe that we live in. I mean, you look at a lot of ancient cultures, the way they talked about existence, they were much more advanced than what we do now, because again, that's enlightenment, knowing how things operate, being well aware, being sufficient in understanding the human experience. And now we're in a situation where we want to keep dumbing things down. I remember when I used to work at the Museum of Man as an intern, and people would make fun of the Egyptians because of what they believed. Where it was like, oh yeah, they believed that the heart was the the most important organ. We all know it's the brain. But the more I've understood spirituality, the more that I understand the human existence using psychology as well, they were right. Like, the heart is the most important organ. It's where your soul is. It's like, that's the mechanism. I was thinking about this, like, I play World of Warcraft, and I was thinking about how anytime I log into the game, it always knows my character, right? And I've never logged into somebody else's character, not even by mistake, right? Because when you log in, it takes you directly to your character or your characters. Like, that's where you go. So to me, your heart is like the serial number, the code, so that when you log into the simulator, it already goes right to your character, right? Like for me, when I wake up in the game, it knows where my guy's at. It starts up like that. Well, what's the difference between us and that? When I log out, when I'm not here in this present state, where do I go? But when I'm logging in, where am I at? Right here, right? I come back to this login screen because my access to this simulation only comes from this avatar right here, right? So when I log in, I already have my code. I'm already connected to my own character, right? And so I see that this is kind of like what we're living in, that everybody's heart is their own little character. So the Egyptian knew this. They even knew that you needed to be weighed by your soul, right? They understood that you had to be, judged for being a good or bad person. They understood these things. They understood the power of the mind. They understood the power of the gut. They understood all these things, right? And at some point, the powerful don't want us to know that's how it works, because that gives us power to hold them accountable, and they don't want to be held accountable. They want to take advantage of you. It's not hard to know when you're being taken advantage. It's hard to actually do something about it. That's the hard part. And also, again, they don't want us to know, because the more quiet we are about it, the more they can just keep doing it, right? The less we talk about what's happening, the less that's going to happen about it. So a lot of cultures were, in fact, ancient cultures, very correct about the way they saw the world. They tried to teach us something. We used to appreciate our ancestors. We used to appreciate spirits and ghosts. We used to appreciate these entities. And now We make fun of them. We make them into horror things. We're afraid of them. It's funny because like people keep experiencing phenomena, but they question it because again, we live in a society that doesn't want you to understand that there is a spiritual realm. There is energy. There is divinity. There is this other side of the equation because again, then they lose power because you can't control it. That is the one thing they can't control. They can't control the spirit realm. They can't control the ether, right? And so that's the real, I would say that's the real like problem with humanity is there's this fascination to want to like control the ether. That's like the computer program wanting to control our world, right? So right now I'm streaming from a computer, right? So whatever's happening, and if I was running a simulation, right? Imagine that at some point the entities in the simulation are saying, we got to figure out how to control the outside of here, right? And so there's a cap to how far out you can go from the simulation while in the simulation, right? So again, that's the real other issue too, is that you have this barrier here that they want to be able to control the ether, and the best they can do is to manipulate you to believe it doesn't exist. Because if they can't control it, then just make it disappear. And that's really what it is. They can't control magic. They can't control energy. They can't control the way human beings, they can't control conscious state. They've tried, right? And so all they can do is use an illusion, right? Use magic, which are words, to create an illusion where it doesn't exist so that we never gain access to that power. Really, that's what you're saying. And so as a man, they're making this super confusing too. And I think this is some hilarious stuff to me. So when you look at things like, for example, politics, right? And even like, especially the right wing, because the right wing is all about alpha male, blah, 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 right? When you look at the way a lot of these politicians, a lot of these people in power live their life, they live nothing like they say a man is. Nothing. They are not taking care of themselves physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. They are not stable people. Yet they will sit there and say, you're not a man, and live nothing like that at all. Like nothing. They are the least masculine, manly men that you know. They are afraid of things. They get mad up all the time. They're unstable. They criticize others. They are insecure as hell. And yet they're sitting there telling you, this is what a man is. This is what a man is. And give you no actual examples of themselves. And what's even worse is that there are people that will look at them and say, yeah, he's right. Except never question the hypocrisy of who's talking. Who's saying these things? Who's talking about what it means to be a fucking man? You know what I'm saying? What it means to be a fucking, grown-ass adult in this world and what we can do with that energy. And they're sitting there like, oh, he's not a man. He's just what about you, dude? And they never want to be I got this and da 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 da, and never actually walk the walk. They'll talk a talk about something they're not even capable of doing, but they won't walk the walk. They don't actually live by the word. And that's really the problem you're seeing too, is that we have these people in power who talk a lot about what's right and wrong, but yet don't live the life showing what's right or wrong. They don't live by example. And then nobody holds them accountable. That's the other thing. People don't hold people accountable anymore. They're sheep, but not to the people. They're being sheep led to the slaughter, okay? Not to the pasture. And that's the problem. They painted this pasture. They put blinders on the sheep. So they just listen to the words, but they stop looking at what's actually happening, right? And this is so bad that even when you try to tell the sheep, hey, you guys are sheep, you're being, led to a slaughterhouse. Oh, you don't know anything. You're right. They start parroting the same words that the person that's going to slaughter them has been doing. What do you think's happening with the medical system right now in the United States, where again, these people are not voting in their own interests, and now rural hospitals are going to start closing on them because they don't want freeloaders. They don't even know what the hell they're talking about. But again, they've been so manipulated. They've been so pushed into believing something that isn't real that now they can be taken advantage of, and they're voting against. They're waiting to be slaughtered. They're waiting to be killed. They want to kick them off the benefits. Why? Because then they don't have to pay for that. They don't have to support this, right? So they don't have to help people again. So then you get a system where people are going to start losing their stuff. They're going to start losing their needs. They're going to start getting homeless. They're going to start losing their lives. It's a lot cheaper to have somebody die than take care of them, right? Insurance companies don't care. They'll just start investing in coffins. They'll start investing in the other types of treatments. They'll start investing in over-the-counter shit, right? Because that's the system that operates. It doesn't care about human lives. It doesn't care about the way people are existing. It wants to feed off of their energy. And especially in a society, again, where you have these people in charge who actively know that they're destabilizing the bottom half, but again, trying to keep them within constraints, right? If all the cows at some point said, fuck this, and just start beating the shit out of the farmers, and they'd all get out. But again, they have been so systematically manipulated that they've actually gained learned helplessness. They have learned to be helpless. They do this to elephants in circuses, where they're teaching everybody that they are helpless, that they're unable to solve their problems. And so then again, what happens? Then they stagnate. And then they don't actually develop themselves, and then they lose their mind, they lose their body, and they lose their soul. That's what ends up happening. And then again, these machines start using people's human energy, again, their will, right? Because that's what it is. They use your will for their benefit and give you the minimum in return, right? So you're out there fucking doing all this work, busting your ass. Let's say like, for example, right? You went out and you picked fucking corn, okay, all day. You've been picking corn. You picked a lot more corn than what they're going to offer you to eat. That's what's going to happen. So all that work you just did, all that human energy you just put in, you're not even going to get a fraction of that. You might get a meal or two in comparison to the amount of work you just did, right? And so that's the idea that we're seeing here, is that we're in a system where you're going to give all this energy and you're going to get a little bit in return, right? While they're really benefiting at the top end. And it's right there in front of us. But again, they say, well, you could be us. You just have to do this. But then when you start looking at the way the elites work and the system work, even if they did have one, let's say look, there he is. That's the guy that did it. That's not a sustainable method. Just because one guy is the guy that gets picked, right? He's the token of the group. He's the one that we're going to say, hey, look, he did it. You guys can too. That's, again, the propaganda. Instead of saying, hey, how come he's the only one that can do this? Why is everybody else struggling to do this? No. See, you need to be more like him. And then it just creates this propaganda system that continues and continues to disillusion people, to make people believe that they can achieve something because one person did. So everyone must be like that. But again, if the system was supposed to work that way, it would be working that way. This is the same problem I say we have in school right now, where I say, hey, how does learning work? Who asks the questions, right? The person learning and the person teaching. Well, yeah, you think the person learning is the one that asks questions because when you want to learn something, you ask, right? But what's happening in our schools? Who's asking the question and who's answering? It sounds like the teachers ask the questions and the kids have to answer. That sounds more like instruction than it does learning. Because I'm pretty sure learning comes from the curiosity of one, not the fulfillment of one. Not how am I really learning when I'm just regurgitating information that you asked me for? I didn't learn that. Yeah, I studied it for that moment, but that didn't come from a natural curiosity within me. And so again, we're taking away the ability to have natural curiosity. We're taking away the ability to have confidence, to have fulfillment, to be able to manage stress. We're just increasing these deficits so that, again, they can create the solutions for you later, right? There's a reason why therapy wasn't necessarily the first thing that was offered when it came to helping humans, especially in America. In other cultures, you've had things like shamans, priests, all these things, all those types of like community, like medicine man, like those kind of people. Those would have been the original therapist, right? Because again, what's a therapist really healing at the end of the day? The spirit. I don't have medicine. I don't have any kind of tools. I'm literally using words, which again, it's like a chant. I'm giving you that energy. I'm speaking the good into you. I'm speaking the positive energy into to heal you. We're healing you through sound, which is my voice, right? My voice is the physical manifestation of my spirit. So I'm using my spirit to heal you. I'm using my life energy to heal you. That's really what's going on. So psychologists are like, and psychiatrists to some extent are like modern day medicine men, right? That's what it is, the shaman. And so when we understand that's what's happening, then we can understand, oh, the system that takes away our soul, of course they're going to take. Why do you think doctors, they're taking away their spirituality to some extent too, right? Because again, it's that we want to create a system that has to be logical, has to be rational, has to be this. But the humans are not rational in nature. We are emotional. And so when you take away the emotion, again, you just perpetuate a system of hurt and pain, right? I know there's doctors have one of the higher suicide rates too, because again, they are so on the logical side that they lose that emotional side, that empathetic side too, and they lose that spirit. And so again, when you become lopsided, then your emotional state, your feeling state becomes unstable, and then it has a negative impact on your life in the long run, right? So we want to remember the system is there to oppress our emotional state and our thinking state so that we don't have a spiritual state. So when you start taking care of the mind, right, staying on track, staying focused, working on the things that you want to work on, right, building up that confidence, that's going to help you elevate to that next level. That's going to help you feel confident so that you can focus in and get the things that you needed done in a productive way, helping lift off the stress of you. Remember, you need fulfillment. You need to fill up. I like to think that you have this kind of like positive energy, this thing that has to come out of you, and you have to do things that you don't want to. So negative things like, ugh, but things that are necessary to equate out that part of the equation. So it's like, I have to do this is, I don't want to, but I need to. So you have all this positive energy that needs to come out, doing things that you find negative. And then you have this negative void that you need to fill by doing positive, right? By doing things that are enjoyable, things that you do want to do. So we are a magnetic field within ourselves. So first we want to, get the positive through the negative things that we don't want to do. And then we need to fill up the negative using the positive that we do want to do. And that is the fulfillment cycle. That is the fountain of youth. That is able to, again, make sure I'm taking care. You could call it masculine and feminine energy, right? I need to get my masculine energy out there by being that productive person. And then I fill up my feminine energy by being fulfilling, right? This is the tool, the concept. This also works from relationships, right? Top down, got to work together to respect, got to play to love so we can rest, so we can be at peace, right? It's another reason why they call it resting, because you're resting in peace, right? And so when you're resting in peace, the same thing as you're resting, right? Mind and body rest so that the spirit can be free. So when you're dreaming, right, when you're having nightmares or when you're having dreams, you are temporarily visiting what we would call the ether, right? Heaven. You're logging out of the 3D realm to go to the eternal realm. And that's why you can literally render a lot of random situations, right? You can render a lot of things. You can have dreams of things that haven't existed in a way, right? Because again, you're rendering, right? You have a machine in you that's rendering things. At least, again, when you're on that other side, your spirit is experiencing things. That's why when you are anxious and you look in the future, it causes stress because you're putting your spirit somewhere and your body's feeling the effects, like the Matrix. Or when you put your spirit in the past, it's going to affect the body because you're feeling the effects of that, and they're connected. Same thing as why you have that panic attack or that anxiety attack when you're waking up from a dream, because again, it's that impact that's affecting you and causing that distress within inside of you, right? So remaining balanced helps you engage the world better, helps you experience miracles, helps you feel more fulfilled overall, and helps you elevate your life so that you don't feel manipulated by the people around you, and you start developing that social network where you feel like you got a little piece of heaven here on earth. So guys, remember, it's not about chasing the dream, it's about creating the dream, right? It's about sustaining yourself to the point where you create the world that you want to be in. The more that you put this world outside of yourself, the easier it is to consume your energy. The more that you understand the world's inside of yourself, the harder it is to sap that energy out of you. All right, guys, it's been a pleasure seeing you guys today. We'll talk on the next video. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out. If you have any topics you want me to cover, I'm more than happy to check them out. And I'll see you guys on the next one, okay? Take it easy. Later.